And if your higher self leads you to undertake these approaches, then do so by all means. But also remember that the complexity can mislead. It can create a separation from your spiritual understanding that lives ever present in your heart. What matters is not how much we know about the spiritual techniques of the so-called masters, or even how well we exercise this knowledge. What matters is our ability to love and to express this love into the finest grain realities in our life.
And James, when you say finest grain realities, could you elaborate a little bit on that so we know what you mean?
First, let me get a little glass of water. Just a moment, please. I think it has to do with the inner guidance, because without this inner guidance, you'll have a hard time finding the finest grain realities, as they are very often unnoticed in the everyday experience of a typical person. And this is because of the old paradigm that follows us around like a tired shadow. It tells us to not talk to strangers, to not look into the eye of a person, to obsess about the external or outward appearances of things, to be quiet unless you're spoken to. All of these things dull our connection to the inner spirit that sustains and evolves our activation. So it's necessary to express the 6 heart virtues into the smallest corners of your life. I won't give specific examples, though I understand that could be useful perhaps, but with each example I could reveal, I may conceal another inadvertently. And again, the whole purpose of the post-activation journey is to become sovereign and self-responsible. All I will say is to look into the areas of your life that seem insignificant to your mind, but have a certain magnetism to your heart. We have a saying in Lyricus that the routines and blinders of the intellect are often the playground and windows of the soul. You want your sense of identity to be rooted in the unified field of consciousness, which is the shared property of all. If you can bring your identity to this perspective and sustain it in the face of life's resistance, then you will have left the old paradigm, and the eternal being that lives in your heart will provide the inner guidance you need.
James, I'm going to shift to a more personal question, if I may, since it seems like we're running out of time. Is that okay?
Mm-hmm.
Good. I've been studying these teachings and I'm not sure I even should call them teachings, but since I got involved in Wingmakers, and I have to say I've learned, I think, a pretty good amount of information. But I still don't have what I'd call, or at least what you were referring to, this clear connection to the higher frequencies. And I'm not sure I'd qualify really as a spiritual person, since I still get pretty angry when someone cuts me off in traffic, sometimes with more intensity than I care to even talk about. But I guess my point is how do we know if we're on the right path or doing the right things?
Your condition, I'm happy to report, is very normal. Being vulnerable is part of this world experience, and it is also part of what connects you to others. If you hold yourself at some lofty height, you can become unapproachable, or worse yet, indifferent to the plight and issues of the everyday person. You see, the spiritual writings, by and large, are written by those who have been facilitated by Spirit to produce the information as a means to rekindle human awareness of the Creator and the heart virtues that it lives through. These writers are often writing from a higher dimensional framework where the gravity of real problems is sort of stuck off to the margins, if you will. Add to that the stressors that dictate our world, and it is not an easy thing to remain a loving and sensitive heart. And so we do yoga, meditation, breath work, toxicity assessments, and 100 other things to support our journey. It's important to understand that all are equal in the eyes of God, whether you have ascended to the lofty plains of purity or you are just starting your climb from the desert floor. You are valued no more or less. And this is because we are all projections of a unified field of consciousness. And while, to be sure, we are individually focusing this field to conform to our unique character and tendencies, at the bottom line, as they say in business, we're a family of explorers and co-creators. We're divine collaborators who, wearing the human biology, sometimes clumsily make mistakes. When you experience the material world, know that you are not experiencing it alone. And this is a very subtle distinction I'm about to make, but it's an important one. You can converse with God, you can have the conversations of truth and love, and this is well and fine because it is educational. But as you go through life, it's indispensable to feel the presence of God, to experience the terrestrial world together as one. This is co-creation, and it is a sizable step up from education.
Mm-hmm. I'm not sure I'm clear about that last part, James. Could you elaborate on what you mean when you say, co-creation is one thing, education is another?
Yes, that's precisely why I said it's a subtle distinction. The conversations between an individual and their creator are important exchanges of energy and information, but it is always you and God, a plurality of exchange, if you will. Co-creation is not a plurality so much as it is the exploration of the terrestrial world as one. God and you are one, and that as you go through your life experience, God sees and hears through your human instrument, nudging you this way or that because you have invited its presence into your heart. Now remember, I suggested earlier that the heart, or human emotional system, is the primary organ of perception relative to the ultra-fine frequencies of the higher dimensions. If you invite God into your heart, if you feel this presence blooming, then as you experience your life, you can feel that it is being done creatively in the moment, together with God, not as you are experiencing life and then reporting back to God through prayer or meditation where you seek advice on this decision or that. This is how you know when you're on the right path. Let me add one more thing. Your ego has an eternal counterpart, and the purpose your ego has held in high regard is rooted in an historical context that is rapidly slipping into irrelevance. The landscape of creation is being renovated, so to speak, to allow for a chain reaction of consciousness that will sweep this planet and carry it and its creatures to new vibratory fields. Now, the ego has been locked away in fear and lack of trust. It is as if these qualities were hard-coded into the human species. Ideologies